Good evening, everybody. Thank you for coming to the policy meeting. We are going to call the meeting to order at 6:34. All are present. Okay, and now we'll open it up for public comment. Bonnie, did you have any? Nope, not seeing anybody. We'll move on from that. Next is approval of the minutes. I didn't see any updates. Bonnie, did you get anything? Anybody have anything now? Okay, can I get a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved. Second.
All in favor? Aye. Okay. And then on to our discussion of our policies for this meeting. We have two policies that we pulled out to discuss separately because we had there's a little bit more context to these ones, and we thought we can get some information from the district on what direction to take on these and where we should go. So I think we're going to hand it over to Shanette, to Mrs. Sim.
Yes, thank you. I had to push the button. So the two policies we're going to talk about tonight are 660, which just deals with some minor changes in some of our curricular expectations. And then the other one is a program that we've been implementing that the state has made a change in. So in terms of some of the curricular work that we've already been engaged in, it's been expected that we're teaching the dangers of fentanyl at the high school level, and that's been embedded in our health course for a couple of years. They've now modified that to start that conversation in the middle school grades. So we've met with our middle school health educators, which are also our physical education educators, and we've talked with them on identifying where that could fit and what curricular resources they might need to assist them with that. Another thing added to a course that already exists and curriculum that we're already teaching is, as part of our driver's education coursework, we now have to make sure that we are including the safety of workers in work zones and ensuring that students understand, everything that goes along with that in terms of slowing down, being mindful, fines associated, etc. I'll come back to this middle bullet here in a second. At the K-12 level, we are to be adding some units. Now, some of these already exist. Again, in evaluating what we're currently teaching, we feel at the high school this is pretty well covered. It's going to be the elementary, middle school where we will have to identify resources. But we are to really beef up the environmental education that we are covering and the needs for conservation of our natural resources, the impact of climate change, and things such as that. So that's something that we will have to be working to add additional instructional materials into. This other piece, the middle bullet, this is something that I'd like to bring back to the board later this winter. So some of this work we've been engaged in at the high school level as it relates to the college and career readiness indicators that we're collecting. And I think we've shared at a previous meeting that, students can graduate with like a scholar diploma if they meet certain criteria. What's been added to this is a couple of things. First of all, this work needs to move down, as would be expected. But there's something now that's called the College and Career Pathway Endorsement, or the CCPE, and that aligns to the PACE framework. And what that is it takes three different areas where students need to demonstrate that there's been some instruction. So like financial literacy, how to be prepared and ready for post-secondary opportunities, whether that's work-based, military-based, or continuing education. And then also just how overall academically they're being prepared for success post-high school. So we've engaged in some work already with our high school, and our counseling and advising department under Sherry Klatt's leadership, they've actually taken the PACE framework that the state shared, and they've aligned everything that's happening with our students 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th grade. So we will be engaging here after the winter break with our middle school to engage in that same process, and then we'd like to bring those here to share at a board meeting with you and our public. Part of this is the district can opt out of this requirement. However, to do so, we would have to really do a lot to prove our own, work that we're doing, where it honestly is easier to just follow what the state has created and has sent out. I did reach out to some of our local and beyond local districts to find out if they were opting out or going to be utilizing the PACE framework, and everyone that responded said they would be using the PACE framework. They were not going to be developing their own. There is a due date for some of this work, which is July 1st of 2025, and so we will have to engage in some of that work. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were going to say something.
That's okay.
And again, I'd like to bring this, back to the board as we develop this.
So did it seem like then, with what Sherry Klatt did, that we were meeting where we are where we should be for high school, or did we have to add some things in there as well?
No, I think at high school we're in a really good position because it's work they've been doing, and with the Naviance program that helps them meet a lot of those requirements.
Right.
Anyway, it really is at the middle school
Just
level
the
where that's
middle
going to be a larger lift.
Okay, that sounds good.
The other policy is the Accelerated Placement Act program. If you recall, a couple years ago we shared that, the goal that we should have is that, we should ensure that students who demonstrate that they would be successful in advanced coursework, be that honors, AP, or like going to a different level of course, that we are in fact identifying those students and enrolling them in those courses. So we did this last year. We actually just today talked about, how well those recommendations and placements have been for our students. It does require us to use this past year, we were to use criteria of a student who met or exceeded criteria. And primarily that criteria is the Illinois Assessment of Readiness, or once they are in high school, it can include some of the, now it would be the ACT suite of assessments. We do notify parents, we notify students, it's all part of our registration process. But ISB has shifted for this next couple of years to, we could use exceed only. And the reason is because they're going to be, working on what is going to ultimately be our, criteria for demonstrating proficiency as a school district. We aren't sure yet what that's going to be, if it's going to be, 4 criteria, 3 criteria. And so they are saying that up until the 28-29 school year, we could just use exceeds if we chose to, which I anticipate is the year they think they'll have that solidified. We'll have some data. However, we are choosing to continue to use both meets and exceeds to identify more students for that opportunity.
So essentially, it will just stay as it has been the past year. We're not going to adjust the policy again.
Correct. We're staying the course.
Okay, I think that makes sense. Do we know, and maybe not yet because we haven't even finished a full semester, but maybe we can review at a later point, like what the results were of this, and is this helping students? Is this hindering students? Do we need to adjust assessment at all? I know we are bound by some of the requirements of the state policies, but I would love to kind of see how that went.
Yeah, absolutely. We actually talked about that today with our secondary principals. We don't have grades yet to attach to it, but we do have the, what was identified, through the Accelerated Placement Act, what the teacher recommended. We even have, like, if a student went, with the teacher recommendation or not with the recommendation, what parents selected. So yes, that's absolutely information we can bring to the future board meeting, but we would like to wait till we have grade data to tie to it as well.
Yeah, I think that would be great. It would be a really nice story to see, like, what the effect of the actual policy was and how that's impacting students, because I do know that we did have larger enrollment in some of these classes this year.
Yes, we did.
Now, I would say, even in the looking preliminary at the data, that Shawnette and Mike did some magic with a pivot table I couldn't quite understand, but even one of the things that was reassuring to me is we were able, even without the grades yet, to track and see, well, here's what the the default recommendation was based on this policy. But then there were some instances where the teacher made a secondary recommendation, and we saw that based on the default policy, there was a slightly higher percentage of kids who, a little bit of the way into the semester, dropped that class based on the folks who followed the teacher policy or the teacher recommendation. Very few of those kids ended up making a change throughout this semester. So it's only the first semester, and when we have grades, that'll be the real piece to this, but it was good to see that data today.
Yeah, and I think that long term it could be helpful when we're preparing those 8th grade students and maybe some of our earlier students to help give them guidance of like what, not that anything weighs more and they have every option to choose whatever they'd like, but I think sometimes parents and students are unsure, like what direction to go. So that could be helpful.
Can I make one more comment on this policy? So getting used to the buttons, sorry. Shawnette shared the first part about this that just requires us to, or that our recommendation is to stick with both meets and exceeds. There's another question that is being asked of the policy committee in terms of taking this policy forward. And there's an optional statement in there that says we can include language that says we include in our practice a waiver of a course completion requirement if the district determines that the student has demonstrated mastery of or competency in the content of a course or unit of instruction. Our recommendation as an administration would be to not include that in our formal policy. We do have some practices in place at the high school that in some certain circumstances, there might be students who, don't might jump a course if they've passed a test or something like that. But in general, we don't feel it would be wise to build into our policy language that says this is automatically something that's optional. Frankly, for one reason, could be a concern of that being in policy and then an expectation that folks think, well, the policy says I can skip a class. I want to skip this one. I want to skip this one. I want to skip English 1. I don't think I should have to take English 1. And we think working with our guidance counselors is the best way to determine when and if these things should happen. So our recommendation would be to not adopt or to move the policy forward without that language in it. Any questions on that part?
No, I think that
Okay.
makes sense because we
Okay.
do have practices in place, so that could still happen.
For sure.
Okay, did anybody have any questions on either of these policies? Okay, I don't either. I think that was a great explanation, and I feel like I'm in line with what the recommendations are, but we will take can I get a motion to move these 2 policies onto the full board?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Okay, those will move on then. On to item number 5, information. I do not have any information at this time. Dr. Barrett, did you have anything?
Nope, I don't have anything now.
And then for item number 6, we don't have any outstanding policy cleanup or review at this time. So we can move on to item 7, adjournment. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor? Aye.